One other question I wanted to ask you because it's a part of this same thing. John Cantrell tells me that he is the fellow who dreamed up this profit-sharing thing so that employees. Now, you got out of Penny the idea that a manager should participate. But the C.R. Anthony profit-sharing with employees is a C.R. Anthony invention, is it not? He said it was your idea, and he worked it out.
Cantrell was a profit-sharing pension plan, too.
Yeah.
Pension plan.
She's waving right now.
But now, really, the same firm of lawyers in 1922 that ramrodded my selling out of the Martin stores and opening the Johansson Company. I've been with them ever since. And the same firm, John Cantrell's firm, is still an outgrowth of the old Harris. It was Harrison, Creelman, and Thomas, and Nowland, and separate ones, and John Cantrell. It's due a lot of the credit of our success in keeping us out of trouble. Not, John always told me now, says, don't wait till you get into trouble to get to your lawyer and come to me. You come to me before you get into it. Now, we keep out of it.
Yeah.
We've never had any serious lawsuits.
Yeah. Never had a serious lawsuit over the years.
Well, we've had a few, we've never lost one.
Yeah.
We have like nuisance cases that somebody calls over.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll see you about this time tomorrow evening, okay?
John come up and say, "Listen, 6 years got there," and then.
Yeah, I knew that, and he said that while he thoroughly enjoyed the business, he didn't feel like that he was never going to make any money unless he got back into general practice of law. And he said that didn't mean that he'd lost interest in the C.R. Anthony Company at any time.
John's one of our stockholders.
Yeah. Well, I gathered he was. Well, I'll see you tomorrow evening. Thank you.
And
I think he had a burnt hole in the middle of
and
it.
then going to had a demolished, and they were ramrodding the deal and getting bids for demolishing. Finally,
Some of these goddamn guys wanted a fortune.
and finally he got one fellow, I think maybe for Enid. Enid was paid him $25,000.
No. It was much less than that.
Well, to demolish it and clean off the ground. And that fellow took his contact and sold some fellow and got $10,000 for it.
But I'll tell you, they had marble in it.
Oh,
But it wouldn't stop.
Oh, yeah.
They had lots of marble.
all the wainscoting was this.
All the marble on all the 2 floors. Now, that fire hadn't hurt them.
Yeah.
But you know, Conoco wanted $85,000. Concho, it was Concho, not Conoco. Concho, $85,000. Everybody was persuaded. You know, they're smarter than they were in writing. It's urban renewal that's educated a lot of people, especially Henry Potter. You know, his daddy was my dealer. Melvin Parker was my dealer at Jinx, Oklahoma. That's where they're from. But his daddy was entirely different ilk. His daddy was a fine Christian man. He was a fine man. But he always paid his bills with this goddamn guy here. He's an entrepreneur. He's first waters. Well, anyway, nowadays they would have torn that down maybe for $10,000, but hauling it away is really the big problem. And I had to even help them sell the city on the idea of hauling away the broken bricks for riffraff on the lake out there for Lake Hefner. You know, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy.
We finally come out in nice shape.
We finally sold it to Holiday Inn, and And by golly, Ross, you remember we sold that to them on a low interest bearing basis.
15 years.
And for 15 years, we thought, Jesus, God, it wasn't good, but it was the best we could do. And for heaven's sake, within 6 months, they pay that off.
You come around and
Low interest, 4 or 5%.
Paid off a 4% loan. I had, and
You know why? They weren't public.
yeah, they were.
And they didn't want that liability to show on their financial statement. Just our good fortune.
So we had a mortgage on it on record.
Yeah,
So they wanted to clean up that title.
no doubt.
Yeah.
They wanted to do that. Yeah.
Well, baby, we've been in a lot of things. All
We
turned
sure
out
have.
good.
Some things he talks about, some things he try to forget.
I don't know, we had-
No, we have not. I tell you, we made trips down there to Louisiana. I remember one particular trip, we went down to Grand Island.
Yeah.
That's about as far south as you can go.
Yeah, that's
When you get down there, when you walk, the water squeezes, just oozes out from around your shoes. And you know, when below the sea level, just that is sea level. And old Lou, you know, of course, he wants liquor right off the bat. Now Ross will take a drink on occasions, but Lou and I, we did more than that.
You did yours and his too.
Yeah. And so we stopped by him. We bought a tote sack full of oysters. I crossed the street over. And one of these little towns, we came back through, and we went into another place. We had to even dust the damn table. They hadn't had a customer in a long time. And this guy bought us some glasses, you know, and some beer for those who wanted beer, and whiskey for those who wanted whiskey. I'll be damned. He went through cracking those damn oysters. My God, he couldn't keep up with that crowd. He and all of his helpers together couldn't keep up. But another time when he was down there, Ross, you remember, we went to this.
You like raw oysters?
Oh, especially if they're fresh. We went to another town, Ross, and Bob McCurry and Dean Gee were flew us down there, and they're playing. You know, what's the name of the town closest to that? Franklin?
Morgan City?
Morgan City. We went into one of what looked like the best place in town, which wasn't a hell of a place. And, you know, the governor had a tremendous appetite for almost anything that he liked, and he loved oysters. And these guys got 4 or 5 people around there cutting and breaking these oysters. And there were 7 or 8 of us in the town. And I remember they just never could keep up with that crowd. They ate them fast, thick and cracking.
Don't they want to eat an oyster?
No.
You don't do much chewing, do you? That's so true. Well, I'll leave you to your fate.
I will do my best.
I'll see you in a day or two, Ross. Come back to me.
We were talking about profit sharing yesterday. And I was wondering after I left here if it would be fair to suggest that if you had got the store that J.C. Penney promised you, if you might not have ended up as a J.C. Penney man instead of having your own store.
I doubt it.
You doubt it.
Now, from the mere fact, you know,
Cut this off.
yes, the right hand, upper right hand turns to the quick yes. You know, young families growing up, and about all really that used to be the society you needed was your church and your work. It's all you could afford.
Yeah.
You go to church, might put in a quarter. And there was no Protestant churches down there. There was all good people, but they were all Latter-day Saints. And it was quite cold. Extremely cold.
And that didn't go well with the Tennessee boys.
No, sir. And they had no, we didn't even see a traveling man that we had seen before, because up in northern Idaho, that's a different world as far as traveling, as far as area concerned.
Probably out of Chicago then, instead of out of St. Louis.
Well, they're out of San Francisco, Seattle, and you say Chicago.
Yeah.
And you don't even see anybody that you know, and there wasn't anybody moving in and out of town that we had known. And together with the E. Walker Dry Goods Company, wanting me back with J.P. Martin Company so I could buy dry goods to the Martin store from E. Walker, writing and so forth, and plugging for me to come back and
Well,
offer me.
that clears up that point. That's what I was trying to get at. But by the same token now, you took great pains to see to it that the people that joined you did participate in the profits and did have stores. So that your disappointment up there undoubtedly was reflected in that, was it not?
Yes. That.
And you wanted to tie people to you.
Yes, that's right. And then when Mr. Martin told me that he wouldn't put more money in the store, but if I took this store and made any money, I could open stores. Well, I was confident. I was just a young fellow, and I just was very confident that I could make money.
It did.
And I did. I paid off my debts, and we went to opening stores, and I got these other 4 or 5 fellows that worked with me with Phineas, and we started out on the same principle. They financed.
Actually, that was a partnership operation.
Yes, we operated a partnership.
You were 1/3 partner usually, and and the store manager was 1/3, and some other manager came in.
The fellow that had operated the store and made the money, he had a third.
Yeah,
I financed
a third all the time. Well, now this came out of this thing. Every manager train a manager, and this was very successful. Now, as you grew bigger and got a lot of stores, didn't this become more difficult to do, to find the manager for the next store, or not?
Not necessarily. We had the manpower then, but the partnership on a large scale doesn't operate successfully. You need a corporation, you need offices, you need, in a partnership, a partner, he can, if he's a real partner, he can still make trades and so forth.
Yeah.
A corporation, you have a head of a corporation, and we incorporated in 1926, but we incorporated with what we call classified stock. Now, we incorporated first authorized capital, $750,000. We only issued just a few $100,000 of it. Now, we had several stores. The Cushion was Class A, Chickasha was B, Hominy was C. At Cushion, we had $10,000 capital stock. And each fellow would own his pro rata share, maybe a third, or not less than a fourth of that stock. And he shared in the profits of it. Well, we operated that way until 1934. And naturally we had some stores that once in a while wouldn't make money, the manager wouldn't. We let him go, and I remember we let some fellow go, and he had some stock. Well, his store had lost money, and he lost all the capital stock. I lost it. And he got in some lawyer, and he said, I've got stock in this Biographical company. Well, it's not worth anything. Why? Biographical company's growing big. So he was contested this. We couldn't have classified stock. Well, really, it's not lawful. The corporation, so we changed from classified stock in 1934 to common stock. All common stock.
But it was a closed corporation.
Closed corporation. Nobody but employees
Could own the stock.
kept it.
Now, this raises...
Now, in order for each manager to retain his interest in his particular store where he didn't have a third interest, we gave him a contract that he would share in the profits of that store up to 1/3 of the net profits of the store, in addition to his salary. We still operate that way.
You still operate that way. Okay, that's what Now, the other thing that is unique, I think, with the C.R. Anthony Company is the fact that you don't have group managers, and area managers, and zone managers, and things like so many of these things do. Is that deliberate that you don't have? I mean, your directors pretty much run the stores, and our central office runs the stores.
Yes, since you have capable managers, now if you have district man, sometimes they have their pets and they want to fire a man when he really hard to keep satisfaction. Now, we've profited by experience of, say, Ward, Sears, Henry's district men, and they go around and they just raise hell with the managers who find something wrong and never find anything right. Now, so we don't have district men. We have our general office and department head. They visit the stores and to see how the merchandise comes in, and we leave it up to the manager. If the manager isn't capable of running that business, then the less he mentions the general office, the better we like him. We'll finance it. We'll finance it. Pay all his bills. But, man, George, we want him to run the store. We want him to be Papa. We want him to, and the help wants to work for him. They got to work for him instead of some
district
general
manager.
office.
All right. Now, this comes back to the thing where you also want the local manager to be a participant in civic affairs. Isn't that right? I mean, you mean he's got to be really an independent merchant in that town.
My philosophy has always been that you get out of your work just what you put into it. You get out of the community what you put into it, and you get out of life just what you put into it. So if you want to make a success in your town, you've got to give something. You can't say, here, give me all the time. You got to say, here once in a while.
Yeah.
You got to put out something. And if you be a part of it, business has always been done largely on confidence and personality. You stand in your store, front door, and you see fellas go by your door, and you see them go down the street and go into the store and handle the same thing as you handle. Why didn't you stop into your store and buy? Because they knew some fellow there and a glad hand and you was a friend of theirs. So if you want to be a friend, you got to be a friend of them and treat everybody right. That's the way to be a business. That's the best advertising you can do.
And this builds you down to the local, on
Yes.
the local level.
We want him to be a part of the community, take interest in it.
I understand that you have gone to the extent, now, I got this probably a little sub rosa. Bo Belcher used to be a good friend of mine, before we lost him. And Bo has been always awful proud of you, and the fact that you would go into a community and would maybe support a bank and maybe buy a newspaper. I don't know how many newspapers you bought and sold. Have you?
Yes, sir.
How many?
I don't know how many, but I remember, you take Harrington Wimberly out at Alfred. He bought his paper. He was owned by the old Pulliam crowd. They owned the Elk City. And Paul Wade bought that. Old C.M. Lawrence up at Woodward. He bought the paper from Ferguson with Huntington. I financed him.
You financed all those papers.
I financed those. And the Muchmores up at Ponca City, the fine people, the old man Muchmore, there wasn't never a finer person than the old man. He had 2 or 3 fine boys, which they're now Muchmore. And when Lou Wentz died, Lou Wentz owned 3/4 of the paper. And the lawyer was in the process of drawing up papers to sell much more than 3/4 interest, but he died before. But the estate, and that just went ahead. And Clyde, the old man had to borrow money, but the bank couldn't loan him on the long term. And I financed him, and he and the boys paid that off before it was ever due. And it was, and there's been a few others. And as far as banking, yes, I've had the interest in a lot of banks. Here up until recently, I own interest in, still own interest in 14. But I began selling my bank interest here a few years ago when I sold this Liberty. I had the largest stockholder in Liberty, and I had too much invested in that, so my attorney and tax man said there's something that happened.
So you started cleaning that up.
Yes.
Well, this is a part, however, really of being a good citizen, isn't it? Isn't that what it was about, most of it?
You got to be well. That's life. You meet the people, you're with them, you're part of them.
Yeah.
It's just like in El Paso, we have several stores. Well, I have interest in 2 banks out there. I don't now. My boys, they gave it to the boys. They have the interest. And Ardmore.
You still think, though, that it's possible for a central office to keep track of all these stores by just simply being darn sure they have good local managers? And it's based upon what they do, the way their records show, isn't it? Whether or not they're a good local manager.
Absolutely depends upon the management and the organization. If he's a good manager, he'll have good personnel. He'll see that he gets a good organization. If he isn't a good manager, he doesn't have a good organization, and they won't make a success. Now, you give me a store in any town where there's people, and the right organization will do business. Because we handle merchandise that 85% of the people use. And if you treat them right,
We may not get to finish that. We'll wait till she calls me. You went to work for Governor Brown down to Wewoka. And you must have had a pretty fair education for a kid that had a 4th reader education for that time. Because you were able to, what were you doing for Governor Brown? You were keeping his books?
keeping books. You know, Governor Brown also operated a banking department. We accepted deposits and checking accounts. And streaming from everybody. Had a correspondent bank, and I kept the books. What we call them, Boston ledgers. And I kept the books. I had studied bookkeeping at this subscription school, which was later called the Indianola Business College. Now, bookkeeping, like I remember he told us, he said, now, this is simple. Keeping books is simple. It's just 2 things that you want to keep track of. One of them's coming in, the other's going out. And anytime you make an entry, a debit here, you got to make a credit somewhere if your book's balanced. So that's all there is to it. Just bear that in mind. Any kind of transaction. Now, the only thing you're going to have to learn is how to classify your entries in your transaction. When you, anything that happens, you'll know that.
Well, you've made a great success, as I look back over it, by hiring high school kids in many cases and letting them come out through the organization. And yet, I find that all of your kids, and one of them is a university graduate. So this leaves us kind of in the, what is your philosophy about education? I mean, how important is it for a young fellow to have a good education?
Well, education is it's wonderful to have it, and it places you in a position that you should advance more rapidly than if you didn't have an education. But an education, a college education, in my estimation, is not absolutely necessary to make a success. You make a success of what you put foremost in your mind. And it's like old Governor Murray used to say. He said he never had the opportunity to go to school very much, but he's been a student all of his life. Now, you can be a student and learn something every day of your life, regardless of what kind of business or associate you have. Like you learn something, association with people. And when I good fortune to be associated with good people, and I've tried to learn something from them and profit by your experience.
Your
Experience is a great teacher.
experience is a great teacher, but you think perhaps that a formal education with some experience added, you ought to go a little faster. Is that your point?
Yes. I want to find one. It depends on the student nowadays. We keep track of our college graduates that we hire, and we hire hundreds of them a year from different schools. And you'd be surprised at the difference of the percentages of them that stay with us and make a success from certain colleges.
And you lose them from other colleges.
Yes.
Now, is it the big school that you lose them from, or is it the little school?
Well, I would say the larger schools you lose them from. The little schools, naturally, most of the college graduates we hire are from Oklahoma, Kansas, or Missouri, around in this area. And schools like out at Weatherford, Edmond, Stillwater A&M College. We've had many out of the schools like that. And the boys out in what we call the short grass country, they go to school at Weatherford. Now they work and go to school at the same time. And they go to school for a purpose, not for the society. Now, a lot of colleges, for the society range, they adopt a standard of living in a lot of colleges that they can't maintain when they get out of college on their own, and they become dissatisfied with their job and with themselves, and they quit. Because they go to school, college for 4 years, and as you know, if the parents are paying their way and so forth, the hours are not very heavy. They have lots of time on their hands. We have had one boy that I know of. Now, there was 1 year that I had 11 grandchildren in different, I had grandchildren in 11 different colleges. Now, I believe in education. And it takes a lot of money. thousands of dollars, which most of them spend at the expense of their parents. But we had one boy that went to work for us when he was 13 years old in grade school out here at Weatherford. And he worked for us evening after school, work on Saturdays, during the vacation, Christmas time. He kept that up until he graduated from high school and he enrolled in college. Worked for us all the time.
You found a place for him in the college town, man, didn't you?
Okay, in Weatherford.
Weatherford.
In school at Weatherford. He enrolled there. Graduated, made good grades, worked for us all the time. And he's one boy that never asked for a day's vacation at any time. Even what we call him a regular extra, you know, working after school. But he was one of the very few boys that we've ever had that would come down before school and work real early, come back after school, work all the time. He was a good salesman, little, red-headed, freckle-faced. And when he graduated from college, to give him steady jobs in the store at Weatherford. And shortly after he graduated, he came into the office one day and he said, "Mr. Anthony, I'd sure like to buy some stock. But the boys tell me there's none for sale." "Well, no, I don't know if there is, Red, because how much did you want?" "Well, I just want to be shares." "Do you have any money?" "Yes." "How much money do you have, Red?" "Oh, a little over $5,000. Well, I just swallowed my teeth. I said, "You mean you have $5,000? "Well, yes, equal to that." I said, "Where did you have it?" "Well," he said, "I've got a checking account, and I've got a savings account, and I bought a little bank stock for bankers. Told me some that and then buy some bank stock." And he told me how much that's worth. I've got stock worth about $3,500 and got $1,750 in cash. "Well, have you still living home?" "Yes." "You pay board?" "Yes, sir." "Who paid your tuition?" "I did." "And you pay board at home?" "Well," he said, "not exactly board, but said I pay all the groceries."